here in America, Hurricane Matthew has fairly miraculously done less damage than a lot of people believed it would, and still believe that it might, because anything can happen with something as chaotic as a hurricane. But there are some, especially in the conservative media, who knew all along that nothing was going to happen. And wait until you find out how they were so sure that this hurricane was going to end up being a relative dud. Although, again, if you refer to our coverage of Haiti, you'll realize that it was actually pretty terrible. So first up, you're going to have Rush Limbaugh, who you might have thought was just a 3-hour-a-day gas bag, but it turns out he's actually an expert on hurricane path analysis. And you're going to see that here.
I have perfected being able to analyze how hurricanes are reported. I've become an expert in spotting the politics in hurricane tracking and hurricane forecasting. And by that, I mean people that work at the National Hurricane Center is part of the National Weather Service, which is part of the Commerce Department, which is part of the Obama administration, which by definition has been tainted. And there's now a story from the Pew Center for People in the Press showing that a majority of Americans do not believe the consensus of scientists predicting that there is climate change. Well, the left doesn't like that, so they keep ramming it down our throats. So in hurricane tracking and hurricane forecasting, I've been able to spot where I think they might be playing games, because it's in the interests of the left to have destructive hurricanes, because then they can blame it on climate change, which they can desperately continue try to selling. I think I've been able to spot when they try to make it look like it might hit a population center, because they want people to think this way. Hurricane reported, must be climate change. They want that thought process.
Yeah. No, it's, you know what I pray for every day? Ooh, let a giant hurricane hit people who really can't handle it, because that's how liberals think.
Yeah.
And
those bleeding hearts he always talks about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get to some people who might not be such bleeding hearts, who seem to think this is real. But I'm amazed by the people who listen to Rush Limbaugh. And I don't want to call them stupid. This is very important, okay, because they're not. I know people who listen to him, and they're good family friends, etc., and they're not dumb people. They're just not aware of the other facts. So
are you talking about your stupid family friends?
Anybody on Facebook that you know.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
So if you listen to that and that's your only source of news, he sounds, I mean, the thing is connected to the other thing, which is connected, and then by definition, that's the taint, right? And you're like, okay. And so, but if you listen to Michael Mann, do you have the Michael Mann quotes?
I have the Matt Drudge.
Okay, all right. So, look, Michael Mann is the climate scientist.
Yes, I did read it, but we don't have.
Right. I just want you to understand the other side of this real quick, as we're going to give you more context here. He was actually on Michael Smerconish's show. Bless Smerconish for having him on and having an intelligent conversation about this. He's one of the renowned scientists in the world, climate scientists in the world. And he explained, look, in order for you to taint all this stuff, as Rush Limbaugh explains, you would have to have the NOAA and the National Hurricane Center working in cahoots real time. Because if you're going to change the measurements of the wind, you've got to also change all the other measurements. Otherwise, every other scientist who looks at it, or anyone meteorologist that looks at it, will go, wait a minute, that wind doesn't match the other measurements, so this is off, there's something off. And they publish it almost instantaneously. So there'd have to be somebody inside maybe the plane that's chasing the hurricane going, okay, change the weather and the winds and the pressure and all this, go, before Rush Limbaugh catches on. Like, it is inconceivable, okay? And if you understand science, so for example, these guys are like, climate change, I mean, what could possibly... Michael Mann's a scientist, so he's careful. He's like, look, did this hurricane, was it directly caused by climate change? Of course you can't say that on any particular storm with any degree of certainty. But then he explains why it happens. So honestly, I didn't understand it fully until I read this particular interview, okay? So the water is... They keep talking about how the water gets warmer and warmer. And I'm like, okay, so what happens then, right? So it turns out that in the old days, before climate change got to the point that it is, hurricanes would dip into the water, lift the water up, but if they dipped in enough, they'd get cold water. And the cold water dampens the hurricane. Now they're dipping in and they're getting only warm water because the warm water is lower. It's taking up a bigger chunk of the water. So then it goes from a tropical storm to a hurricane category 5, boom, immediately. There's no cold water to dampen the intensity of the hurricane.
Yes.
And Michael Mann says, wait, now do you think that we had the 2 largest hurricanes in recorded history on the two sides of the earth, Pacific and Atlantic, in the same year, coincidentally? Right?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's like, because of these scientific reasons. Now, once you hear Michael Mann, then you hear Rush Limbaugh. And if you go with Rush Limbaugh, well, then you are stupid.
Yeah, well, I think to be fair, you do have to look at, you at least read the beginnings of all of Rush Limbaugh's published works on hurricanes. His scientific analyses of wind speed data. Yeah, and look, so Matt Drudge, who apparently people go to his website. I've never understood why, but he's considered big on the right, so he says the deplorables are starting to wonder if government has been lying to them about Hurricane Matthew intensity to make exaggerated point on climate. That's one part of it. The other part of it is that they've been gradually raising global temperatures over the course of the past 2 decades to make an exaggerated point about climate change, which I think is more persuasive. He went on to say Hurricane Center has monopoly on data, no way of verifying claims, NASA ground observations, don't even worry about the rest of it. So this reminds me so much of earlier on, it seems to have gone away, the conspiracy theories about polling in the general election, that it's all being manipulated. Anytime someone tells you how simple something like the hurricane data reporting or polling is, they are ignorant at best. I would say they're a moron because this stuff is so complicated, involving so many people, that the hurricane, the tracking centers and all those are getting reports from President Obama that they need to hype all this up. And none of that data is ever revealed. None of the emails or the communications ever come out. And then with the polling, the fact that this is being done by so many different media companies, so many different universities, they're all working together, and yet we have no indication that they're working together. It's all amazing, and it's because people, they want the world to be simple, and they want it to be understandable, but the world is complex in the same way that a hurricane is complex. It's very hard to predict, and it's very hard to manipulate in a way that wouldn't actually be obvious.
Cenk, first of all, you need to slow down on all that book learning. All right, because that I don't know where you get all that nonsense from. No, more and more, Rush sounds like a guy getting high at night on the internet. You know what I mean? Just watching the internet, like hurricane. Oh yeah, let me tell you what really happens. Well, the government's behind this. Like the government is behind everything. And I say over and over to them, to the right, when they say this, I love the power they give Barack Obama. They make Barack Obama the most powerful person on earth. So now Barack Obama is creating hurricanes. Why not? He's done everything else. You know, it really is beyond comprehension, but there's absolutely, and it's not just a few people, there are millions of people listening to this. Like I was reading a story about this woman who lives in a trailer park in Florida who was like, I'm not moving. I'm staying here because, you know, I don't believe, like, hurricanes and tornadoes look for trailer parks. They literally float around like, where are those trailers at? Wham! That is the first place you leave. Like, but she's like, I'm sitting here, you know, I'm listening to Rush. Rush told me that this is all a conspiracy. Obama's behind it. And I say, look, if we lose you, well, one less vote for Trump. You know.
Well, look, and Michael Mann said that these are very dangerous conspiracy theories to be spreading, and people theoretically could die if it does circle back around to the U.S.
I actually want to mention that real quick because, look, now it's gotten. The example I use it often on, if you don't believe in science, you don't believe in math, and all these things is, well, at some point, gravity's gravity. Okay, you can believe it or you can not believe it, but trust me, you don't want to test it, right? And so we've gotten to that point now where they could actually die because of these insanity and these conspiracy theories. Like, oh, don't believe in science. No, the hurricane's not really going to hit. It's not really that strong. There's no such thing as climate change. Stay put in your trailer park. The sick part of it is, you know, Alonzo's joking around. We all joke around. But we actually want her to leave and get to safety. Right? Whereas Rush doesn't give a damn. If she dies along the path, He's actively lying to her
And by
and
the-
endangering her life.
It's government, too, that is NOAA. They are the ones giving these warnings and saving these lives. So without government, more of these people would be dead than are dead now. These evacuations wouldn't happen as early because we have the ability to detect these things. So they can talk about government and how bad government is, but government in this case is saving lives. And the irony here, too, on a political spectrum is they had an opportunity to put Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush, and we'll talk about Jeb Bush for 1 second, as their nominee, and they have this fool Donald Trump. But Jeb Bush, all you want to say about Jeb Bush, all the things you didn't like about him, everyone, and I won't say everyone, a lot of people in Florida credit him with overseeing a spectacular effort whenever there were hurricanes there. Preparing the state, going to Washington, going to popular and unpopular presidents, getting coverage for that state there. And so the whole idea that the Democrats are sitting back there in Washington, as Alonzo was saying, going to these departments and saying, do this stuff, it doesn't work to anybody's advantage. Nobody wants to see this. But thank goodness the government is there to help people get out of there.
Yeah. And the other thing is, what's so bad about leaving your house for a couple of days and then the hurricane doesn't hit, so your house wasn't destroyed? You know what I mean? Like, that's not a bad thing. So you saved your life, you saved your family, you left for 2 days, and it didn't hit.
When you
How
come
is
back,
that
the UN
bad?
turned it into Hobbit homes. That gives them time
And
to
your
move
milk
in.
went bad.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
So really fast, I want to roll. So Limbaugh's idea was that this is a big Dem conspiracy. Obama, he's trying to convince you of climate change, and he's got some allies in this. They're weird allies, though, because the Republican governors of Florida and North Carolina oddly worried about the threat posed by Hurricane Matthew, which you'll see in this clip.
While the eye has not made direct landfall, it still is time to make a direct hit.
Tropical storm force winds slightly further inland, which do cause us concern.
We are very concerned about storm surge, and the worst effects are still likely to come.
The greatest impact in North Carolina will be Saturday through Sunday morning. That's heavy rain, strong winds, storm surge, and very strong coastal impacts.
Just look, I'm really concerned about Jacksonville, and I'm really concerned about Nassau.
Hurricane Matthew will bring very large waves, dangerous surf, and rip currents, and the potential for significant beach erosion.
About 600,000 homes are without power.
I cannot stress, if your power goes out, just don't assume it's going to be turned back on in the next 5 to 24 hours or even 72 hours. We could have prolonged power outages.
But we're not out of this yet, and we're just now doing the assessments.
So it's weird to have these hard right-wing governors who are pro-Trump. Rick's got another instance that you need to leave, evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. That's a direct quote. Working with a liberal conspiracy of Obama.
Yeah.
And
bipartisanship.
Now, as I kid around about that, then I thought, you know what? When Chris Christie, when Superstorm Sandy hit, worked with Obama to make sure people were safe, the Republican governor, it pretty much cost him his career on the Republican side.
They held it against him.
Certainly.
Yeah, they did. And so it has gotten so insane now when Republican governors go, wait a minute, this is actually real and we're trying to save your lives. They're like, we're going to mark that against you.
Right.
Okay? So, there he goes with the liberal conspiracy about the hurricanes in our lives.